Hello, so today we are going to tackle the chapter 5 of Wheelocks Latin, and we are going to do the exercises. And the reason I decided to put out this video is because when I was doing these chapter exercises and translations, I was very, very confused, and it took me quite a while to sort of find a proper way to tackle these exercises, because the further on you go, the longer they get. So something like this might actually get to something like this, which just looks very unapproachable. And so in this video, I kind of want to go over my method of doing it and talk through our process, and also help to explain some questions that some people may have. So this is chapter 5, and chapter 5 is basically the start of it getting a little bit longer and more challenging, and using different tenses and stuff. So let's just tackle the first one. So the first thing I would do when I look at this is to sort of just read it out and not try to translate anything first, but to just say officium liberos viros semper vocabat. And straight off the bat, I like to pick out the verb, and the verb is normally the easiest one to pick out, just because you kind of already know the endings and you know the verb stem. So first of all, just do that, and maybe I'll read it a few more times. Officium liberos viros semper vocabat. And the second thing I like to do is to pick out any kind of structured a little bit. So first of all, I can say that these two have the same endings, which means that this should be agreeing with this. So this is an adjective, and you can see that by the os. And obviously it's good to double check, but at this stage it's pretty easy to see. And then we see this, which isn't a noun or a verb, and it's actually an adverb. So we kind of know that this helps with that. And the last thing we need to do is find out the subject. Now this one's actually a little bit harder, just because officium ends in a um, which you would think it is accusative, but it is actually neuter. So it's actually neuter nominative. But if you didn't know that, you could also just have a look at this ending, and you could see that this is accusative, plural, masculine. Yep, so we have that for the second declension, masculine. So we can also sort of tell. And now I will actually start translating it. And by this time, I've sort of got the context of the sentence. And so let's start with the subject first, officium, which is duty. Next, we have the verb. So obviously English, we normally just have the sentence structure as subject plus verb. Verb plus direct object. So this is just a simple sentence, and we can figure that out. Vocabat, we look at the ending, and you realize that it is imperfect, and it is third person, which, again, if you didn't know that, you could also just observe, but this kind of clarifies that, yes, this is the subject, because it is singular, and this is also singular, so it can't possibly go with that, because the verb has to agree with the subject in the person and gender. So duty was calling, and here I realized that, I forgot my adverb. I forgot that this an adverb modifies an verb, and semper means always, and it would not make a lot of sense to say duty was calling always just in English. So I want to make that sound a little bit nicer, so I might write duty was always calling, and we add the end of the sentence free men. So we kind of check everything, and yes, this sentence does make sense grammatically, and it does make sense in the context as well. You can't say Freeman was always calling Judy, so this is correct. Let's move on. Now, this is a little bit of a longer sentence, and we have a question, and so the first thing I noticed when I'm reading this, maybe I'll read it through it. Habebibus ne motos viros et feminas magnorum animorum. And the first thing I noticed that we have a verb with a literal ne, and ne actually just symbolizes that it is a question. So this we can sort of just ignore, but it's good to know that yes, this is a question, and it will most likely start with are, something to do with the verb. So so yeah, let's actually highlight the verb as well. Habebibus. So we can kind of tell that it's we have, but let's just look again. And again, I can immediately tell the endings of these two are the same. So the adjectives are actually normally easier to spot. Well, in this case, they're both first adjectives of the first or second declension, so it's relatively easy, but it will get a little bit harder if you have mixed conjugations. Have mixed declensions. So if you have mortem, viros, it wouldn't work. There would be no such thing. But say if you had that, that would kind of trick you out a little bit. So let me just disagree with that. And we have an ed. So this is conjunction. Kind of ignore this in the grammar scenes, but we do know that it separates the sentence. And then we have feminas, magnorum, animorum. So again, we can see that these two are the same ending, and they have the classic genitive ending. So we should know that genitive, plural is either orum or arum or just something rum. So here we can tell that these are genitives, and they probably genitives for that. So I'm actually just going to put this in a little bracket, and obviously this is an adjective. So if we actually think in the grand scheme of things, this is sort of describing courage, and the whole phrase is describing the woman. And now let's try translating it, and this one is actually pretty easy in terms of its structure. We can just kind of translate it down and down and down and down. We don't have to move things around like here, which I could do that. So we don't have to translate it like all around, so which is good. So let's start with the verb. Again, we start the sentence with the verb preferably. We don't start with you are happy, question mark. Start with are you happy. So that is kind of just a simple rule. Habebibus, and now we realize that it is bi, and this is kind of trippy. It will sometimes trip you up. Habebimus, habebamus, with the first or second conjugation. So just be aware that we have an I, we have a B, and that is future. And obviously mus is first person plural. So we have, so if this wasn't a question, it would be we will have. But since it's a question, it is will we have. And we don't need to translate the no. And then just translate it kind of in the sequence that it is in Latin. So many motos, men and women, females, women. And this is genitive, so we can either say women's courage, courageous woman. We can either add apostrophe s onto the ending, but I feel like woman of This is magnorum, so great. Animorum is courage, and don't get this confused with animal, which is just animal of great courage. And then I just read the sentence and I think, is this correct? We have many women of great courage. Yes, it does make sense, and we can go on. Okay, now this is a little bit harder. It's a little bit harder to get right, especially sort of figuring out the person, number, tense, or the person, the number, and the gender of each of the words, but we kind of go step by step. So again, therefore, this one doesn't conjugate. It's just a little adverb, therefore. You, and this one tells you that it's singular, and it doesn't specify a gender, but you doesn't actually have a gender, so you is just like to, well, but it doesn't have like a masculine, feminine version of you, which is good. So you, singular, will save. We get to know that this is a perfect. So I'm actually going to write this down, and I'm going to analyze them. And you won't be able to do this with everything you do. However, this is a good habit to get into when you first start, especially if you're on, say, like a test or something. It's just much safer. So you will save. So we know that it is, let's just write the person, number, tense. So you, because you is a subject. It looks like you is a subject. Yes, it comes before the verb. You, so that means it's second person. And we know that it's singular. And it is future tense. The reputation, and we can also sort of tell that this is direct object, so it's you will, and you will save the reputation. So it's you, and the reputation is the one being saved. So maybe I'll write little accusative. This is singular. Don't really need to write the gender because it's a noun and it has gender. All of our foolish boys. And so even though this is kind of like a long thing, it's always good to remember that of our foolish boys, of in anything, most stuff is just to signify that this is genitive. You don't need to write an extra one for of. So of our foolish boys, so we have two kind of adjectives here. So foolish, are, and maybe I'll just write boys. Boys is plural. Plural. That's genitive. Plural, masculine. Even though we don't really need to write the gender, it's good to know. And obviously these agree with it, so they will be genitive, they will be plural, they agree with the noun. And let me just structure the sentence. We sort of want to make the sentence look a little nicer. So again, I talked about normal English. It's a subject, verb, direct object, but in Latin it would be, normally we would have the direct object we have the direct object, or we might have the verb before that. Maybe we only have the verb before that. Again, it's a very flexible thing, and most of the time order doesn't really matter, but just for this I might say verb, direct object, and subject. Again, it's not really a huge deal. Sometimes we will also have the verb at the end. Might be at the end. So maybe we can make the verb be at the end for this one. Verb. And it's also good to note that because we don't have a name of you, we don't know who the you is, so you will save is actually the verb here. We don't need to write an extra thing for to or to or whatever, because the verb just needs to have the second, singular, and future. So let's start. And also, one last thing, this is at the start of the clause. Normally, therefore or anything would be at the middle of it, so maybe let's put that in the middle and leave the front to a little bit later. So therefore it's igitur. You will save is you serwa be, and that's the sort of stem for future, and we have bo bis. So, Sarabis. You will say the reputations of our foolish boys. And maybe I will put the reputation before, just so I can have something in front of the igitur. And yes, we're kind of breaking up the sentence by having two parts of the direct object, but in Latin, order doesn't matter. So you could write this a lot of ways. I could show you guys, but for example, from igitur Sarabis, and of the reputation of our foolish boys, so it's just genitive for all. Puerorum, and we kind of know that it has the same ending, nostrorum, and it's good to know that noster contracts, and so we have the same ending for each one of them. Obviously you could write this many ways. You could do maybe this same thing here and do puerorum stoltorum nostrorum carababis. You could do this countless ways, so it's really just up to you and your preference, and you could obviously also just translate it straight as igitur, carabis, famum, stuff like that. But, you know, sometimes you can be a little bit more creativity. Viti. Yay. Okay, let's go into the last sentence. Last sentence seems a little bit more straightforward. Again, English, we still dissected, not digested. Money and glory were conquering the soul of a good man, and straight after that, we highlight the verb. And we, obviously in English, the sentence order tells us that money and glory are the subject, but if we didn't know, we could also just look at were conquering, and this is a plural, so that's great. We're on track. The soul of a good man, and again, we can see that this is a direct object, and again, of just symbolizes that it's genitive, so we don't need to add anything else. Of a good man, and also English should be quite familiar. Good agrees with man. So let's actually do this quicker and try to do a speed one. And this one we can sort of just go with it, but again, I might write third person, plural, imperfect, just to remind myself. Soul of a good man. These are all just third person singular. And the soul should also agree with that, actually. So soul should also be third person singular as well. Let's start. Money and glory. Pecunia. Again, something to note is that money is not plural, it's singular. It might sound like a stupid thing, but just a reminder. Gloria. Money and glory. And I'm going to put the verb at the end, so let's just skip word conquering. The soul of a good man. So the soul, ani. Now this one is actually a neuter, so... Oh no, this one is not neuter. This one is animus, but we have accusative, so animum. So actually, let's add that, accusative. I think I forgot to add that in the first round. And then we have of a good man, so genitive. So this is accusative actually, and this is genitive, so we actually do need to add that. It's good to kind of identify the differences. Really bonny. Again, see that this agrees with that. And the last one is just conquering, so conquer, supera. And then were conquering, so we have BA, and we just add the ending NT. And we can kind of check. And just final note is that this adjective can act as a substantive. So because it's masculine, it actually just implies it's man. Same to if you have just like feminine, it implies woman, or neuter, it implies thing. So we actually don't necessarily need the weirdly. We could just say pecunia et gloria animum boni superabat. And yeah, so hope you guys learned something. If you guys have any other questions that you want me to go through, please let me know. And thank you guys. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Goodbye.